This is the Workflow Show. Media production technology stories, discussions about development, deployment, and maintenance of secure media solutions, and of course, some workflow therapy when you need fast relief from your painful media workflow challenges. I'm Jason Whetstone, Senior Workflow Engineer and Developer for CHESA.
And I'm Ben Kilberg, Senior Solutions Architect at Chesapeake Systems.
On our last episode, we welcomed Dave Helmly and Michael Gamboeck from Adobe to chat with us about their new certification program for partners, the ACESP program. As a reminder, CHESA was one of the first organizations in the U.S. to receive ACESP certification. And we talked to Dave and Michael a little more about what it means to be a partner and collaborate between Adobe, integrators like CHESA, end users, and when the value to the customer makes sense, maybe even our competitors. We talked about how agility is key in a time like we've had since spring of 2020 during the pandemic. We pondered a bit about who might benefit the most from Apple's new Silicon Macs. And finally, we talked a bit about managing expectations when choosing a media asset management or workflow platform. A quick reminder, though, to subscribe to our podcast, and if you have suggestions for guests or episode topics, tweet at Workflow Show and do the same on LinkedIn. Workflowshow@chesa.com is our email address. Now back to our discussion with Michael and Dave.
Workflow Show. We are seeing a pretty big uptick in brands right now. I've been working with Piedmont here in Maryland, a division of American Airlines, and even other American Airlines groups, and Coca-Cola and all these other types of companies, and even some oil and gas companies like Chevron and stuff coming to us about needs for video. By the way, these are very simple needs, right? These are like, we just need to be able to create some sort of video on site to do this thing. Maybe it's a survey video or something that someone's giving. How do we help simplify that for people that don't use these tools, like maybe a bunch of the listeners that are listening to the podcast now? How do you simplify video with the sort of big buttons and make things easy enough? Because everybody's creating video, whether it's a TikTok video or who knows what next platform. It's going to be something like
Right.
FaceTalk or you don't even know what the next thing is. And again, that's where
FaceTube. Yeah.
Anyway, but that's where we're counting on you guys, is to say, this is an ever-changing arena of just a deluge of technology coming at us. Of course, we enjoy that to some degree, but sometimes it's just like getting hit with a fire hose constantly, and we're expected to know, right? And it takes a group of us at this table
Exactly.
to sort of have a conversation, how to weed through some of this tech.
Or it needs a village to grow a child.
And sometimes workflow therapy, sometimes the therapists need their own therapy. Right, Ben?
That's true. It's absolutely true. And what strikes me about this conversation and kind of what we're all angling at is it's always about the relationships, right? Yeah. It's the relationship between the client and their service provider and the technology companies, and the closer everybody has ties and the routes of communication that remain open, that's when you guys get amazing new ideas from end users who say, oh, I just wish it would do this thing. And then everybody says, oh my God, I'm so glad it does that thing, right?
And sometimes the thing, by the way, speaking of panels, is pretty complex. So you take, one of our competitors, Avid, awesome company, we've been working with them for 3 years on their new panel, right? Because people have invested on a back end, for example, and you guys have done some work in that arena. And if you haven't seen what they've done to sort of connect things with their Media Central platform with Premiere, it's mind-blowing. It is absolutely amazing. And this type of technology puts the editor in the driver's seat to say, today I'm gonna use Premiere and I can deliver my project, or tomorrow I'll use Avid, or whatever the tool is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to share one story from a client where, COVID hit us last year, and they, as everyone else, need to move over to remote and doing that editing at home.
Yeah, please do.
So it took the service provider, because the way they set it up the system, I'm not lying, 40 minutes, and they were productive as they would be in the office doing news editing. And the reason was They just changed locations in the integrations and made something what I think is also important, what you guys bring into the table for the client is, I'm passionate about a few things, which is creativity for all and team, but also agility. Something that every single company needs to be aware of and needs to somehow implement in their organization. And this is the time where we are in the moment. Everyone is getting disrupted. Everyone is seeing a transformation. And if you're not focused on what you do best and try to build something that someone else knows already or maybe can deliver, you're not fast. You're actually the opposite of being fast.
Right.
You can deliver this. You can, just get this out, make it, and then you can adapt with the client. And you will be a trusted advisor for clients because you are adapting on their needs and you're choosing the right vendors and you are bringing in the right storage and you're bringing in and you're changing it because it's needed. And then something else is happening and then you advise them to a different direction. It's an ongoing friendship, partnership.
Right. Yeah.
It's a win all the way around, right? Everyone involved. It's a three-way win, right? If you think about it that way, which is rare sometimes, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's a continuing relationship, I think, is also important. You guys have a pretty good reputation for that as well. It's not just set it up. I mean, you're kind of there for the full life cycle of this project and whatever the next one is for the client. I think we kind of count on that too as Premiere and After Effects and our tools go through the next cycle. Again, we kind of talked about, something like M1. I mean, we had a whole new chipset, and we've all, for those of us with gray hair, we lived through System 7 Savvy and OS 2, and all these old operating systems. And it's like, okay, now we just got another one. Here's the next new Power PC to Intel switch, right? But again, through these changes, we get we're getting pretty good at it, right? Because I think we kind of know what to expect and how to go through this, and customers will count on how we've done this 3 times before. But again, hopefully there's some new things that we gain out of this. So again, never changing.
Those new Macs are so fast too, right? I mean, they're just crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Michael, one of the themes that I hear you, I would say just coming back to is to stay doing what you're good at. Be agile. I don't want to use that with a capital A just yet, but other than the overall theme that I'm hearing, which is, stay doing what you're good at, any advice to CHESA or organizations like CHESA that what do you do to get to that agile sort of efficiency?
Are you doing this already perfect? One important thing in agile is being customer focused. And if you can talk about agile years, if you forget the most important thing, which is customer focus, you are failing. And it's just adapt to the needs of the customers and fulfill them fast.
Focus on how you deliver the value to the customer. And
yes. Yeah. And you need to be close to the customers. And you guys are close to the customer. You're listening. You're doing all the projects, et cetera, et cetera. We are close, but I mean, as Dave just said, we are our team is worldwide, but it's limited. We have way more customers that we have team members, and that's why for us it's also about multiplicator of what we do. You are part of our team. CHESA is an extension of our engineering team. It's an extension of our knowledge. It's an extension of our customer relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. More excitement in and around the development of some of these system on a chips and the embrace of ARM and kind of all of the radical changes we're seeing in platforms like you were mentioning, Dave, in terms of the lines between mobile and what we kind of think of as traditional desktop workstations starting to blur.
Well, look, they've got 8 gigs of RAM, right? So think about it, it's like, hold on, 8 gigs of RAM. Now we have our work cut out. Not only do we have to make libraries skinnier and smaller, and Apple's in this example has been a great partner. Again, I think ARM is going to go. We saw what NVIDIA announced, so it's going to go far and wide. But I think Apple's kind of the first out there. There's a lot to rethink. So does that mean that we're going to be able to do a 2-hour documentary for Netflix on an 8 gig Mac, or Or do we just say this? And again, it's where you guys are going to come in. Well, with our testing, we find that this is going to be good for news and simple edit, kind of some of the persona stuff that you guys went through on the training. It's like, well, that's kind of where this fits. And you don't want a customer buying a whole bunch of these because they're the new shiny object. And I don't think Apple would want that either in that example. They want to make sure they're getting the right machine, at least with the tools that they exist today. So I think we do have our work cut out for us, and a lot of the partners will. How do you load plugins on that? Plugins can be very memory hungry. What does that mean? And you guys have your work cut out to sort of say, okay, well, you're looking to run this red giant effect on these things, and that's not going to give you a good experience for what it is you're trying to do. Does the automation tool, by the way, that we've been talking about, maybe you guys build, where does that live in memory, right? Is there going to be enough? So it is interesting. We're kind of going backwards in RAM. By the way, I thought maybe it was a good exercise, by the way, because maybe we don't need to keep loosening our belt as the memory, making our pants bigger, if you will. It's like maybe we're getting a little sloppy in the way that things get done, and we should really think about how libraries get loaded and optimizations. And I think that's another really good exercise that's coming out of this one M1 example. So.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to whatever some of the pro variants might be that we get to see in another 6 months or so, and how that fuels, like you said, some of the back end traditional workflows, how those get shaped and changed by the advancements. Always exciting.
Yeah, it really is.
And one thing that I think is, for me, is becoming more and more into a clearer picture. I get the impression, and maybe I'm wrong, that we see more and more fileless MAM or PAM system. When I say fileless, systems that are not like, you need to start in the MAM, you need to start in the PAM, it's only XDCAM, it's only this or this because we own the file. It's more likely a file is a file. And it could be, try to make a MAM understanding 9x60 or square. It's most MEMs that just fail because they're not built on this. And that's what I see that's why there is no topic or a name out of this, but I see kind of a trend that I see in a bigger project is where they're asking for a fileless PAM or fileless MAM to be faster adapt to new, to the next TikTok, to the next whatever we have. Maybe you see a 21:2 frame rate or frame size or whatever other stuff is coming up.
Customers might also want to know, if they're not real familiar with a production asset management system like a PAM or even a MAM for that matter, why do you need one? It's like, well, you're trying to find 10 files out of 1 million that are going to help you with some sort of, documentary on, the history of CHESA, something. So we are seeing with, again, I mentioned speech to text and transcription coming for us, as we will be able just to click on a video and say, okay, well, just go ahead and process that. We're pretty excited about it. It's working pretty fantastic. That data, whether you choose to display it on screen or choose to search it, almost edit by word search. So now you're going to be able to kind of see assets have some intelligence to them. And, there'll be people that will say, well, really all I need to do is just to have some sort of interface to give me some sort of organization, but I don't need a big, heavy MAM in the background for these types of tasks. And even creating things where I see a lot of documentaries out there that we've worked on where they don't have an asset management system, and they probably should have, because finding stuff can be so hard. All that's going to get easier when we start adding speech to text built into Premiere Pro, which is just going to be a very simple thing, right? Like, I think our attitude on some of that metadata is, you've got Siri, you've got Alexa, you've got all these other things. Speech should just work, right?
Yeah.
So how do we make speech work for us to help automate? Kind of fits into the MAM.
Exactly. I think Dave, what you're speaking to is something that I have realized. I realized a long time ago when we started having in our MAM consultations, we started having comments like, "Why doesn't it just work like Google?" Why doesn't the search just work like Google? Because that's people's experience. That's people's expectation with search, is that they come in and they sit down and they start typing, they get autocompletes. There's already a curated, I think a lot of people don't realize that there's so much going on behind the scenes. I mean, Google knows everything about you. They know what you want to search for. So when you start typing the search, they already have an idea of where you're going in your brain.
Well, that's also going to get it. And I hate to say it this way, but auto edit, make my movie, So it's able to look at the cut and see that you and I are having this conversation. We're kind of tracking your face a little bit. And we're looking for gestures, and we kind of know when to make a cut. And we've been playing with some of this technology for a number of years, as I'm sure other companies have, to try to figure out. And again, we don't want to necessarily do it for you, but be that creative assistant, right? Like these are some of the exciting times that are coming that will just be built on some of the technology that we will be releasing, something as simple as speech to text, but where does it lead us to in 5 years? And how does that fit into something like a MAM? And again, you guys have your homework cut out for you, because you got to keep up with all of this stuff. And it ought to be a fun ride, but never changing.
Yeah, the thing that always strikes me is that you don't think about the amount of additional data that speech to text brings and how hard that hammers a database. Right? That if we run, say 1 million of your legacy assets through speech to text, all of those words will get indexed. All of those words will go into your database and specific records and be searchable. Right. And the database has got to be that much faster and that much larger. When I'm sitting back listening to that, like, all right, so how do we get all of that metadata out of Premiere? Like, I don't care where it comes from, whether it's coming from Premiere.
That's what I'm getting
or
at.
whether it's coming from the MAM. I don't think our end users do either. It's just how fast do they get access to it, and how easy is it to get access to it?
And if they need it today, you guys have to say, well, we have a partner, Gray Meta, or whoever, right? So we'll call out to Dan Daub over there. It's like, hey, there are partners that we have that do some of this today. And a lot of customers may be listening to this today didn't even know you can do a bunch of this stuff today.
Right.
Well, again, the perception is that these platforms just do the thing.
Yeah.
Google just does that. And they might be leveraging Gray Meta. They might be leveraging something. I mean, they've got their own cake that they've baked behind the scenes, but you may be seeing, because of rapid deployment and because of CI/CD processes these days, you might be seeing these features just popping up in these platforms, and they just work. What I think everyone needs to understand is that there is a lot of infrastructure behind that feature, that's out there on the internet that you don't even need to look at or think about or anything.
Make it look easy. Make it look,
exactly. They make it look very easy.
Telling a good joke. I mean, timing is that people don't understand how intelligent comedians, a lot of them, have to be, and the timing. You have to take a difficult task and make it seem simple or funny.
CHESA, you triggered something when you talked about what people expect. We seeing actually this kind of, I do expect it's working this in this way a lot. And we seeing this especially when we are faced with, there's a kind of a big broadcaster and the journalists are maybe using Premiere Pro at home, and then they're getting into the office and then they're seeing a different editor. And then they're expecting, because it's attached to MAM, maybe is part of the MAM system, and they say, why it's not working like I used to doing this? Why it's not working this and this? And that takes me to the point which I think is also very important and super reliable for the clients, is if you use a standard, commodity kind of software like Premiere Pro, which is usable, it's out there, people are trained, etc. It's a standard. And then you are adapt and customize it for your workflows. The value, because of these two different things, are fitting so well together through our openness and the integration possibilities. That is a very big win, because you don't need to do 100%. You can all on your own. You can just use something that is there, that's working, that's proven that's working, and then you adapt the stuff that is unneeded. So that is also will be a challenge for you, but also super exciting, because you can actually change a whole broadcast station during the running. I know an example where one of our service provider is the broadcast is moving buildings. So they are they move into a complete new building on a green field. And what they're doing is, because they not know when they're ready, what they're doing now is they move everything up in the cloud, copying everything they have into the cloud. And then when the new building is there, they can pull in stuff, different aspects of this back into the building, and then they're not building a fallback system because they have it already running in the cloud. So this typically, you need a backup system for the playout. You need this as it's all gone because they are building it on the fly and then pulling it down on the need, on the timing they have. And I always talk about more like the broadcast stuff. It's just my background. So I'm
right. Yeah.
Everybody's a broadcaster now, Michael. If you think about it, COVID has taught us and selling these little switching devices, Elgato, and there's dozens of them out there, and some pretty great tools like Wirecast. Anybody can be a broadcaster. And again, you guys have probably had to coach a lot of people through a lot of that and figure out how NDI wires into this and other types of technology, right? So I do know during some of the presidential lectures and campaigns that were going on, I work with some of the news, and I work with all the news agencies. A lot of that was being produced out of people's living rooms that had no idea, especially when some of the debates were going on, where the switching was actually being done would probably shock you. So,
wow.
So again, this is part of the new times that we've been talking about.
For sure. How many backup internet accounts do you have? Right.
Right.
Yeah.
How many internet connections does your home now have?
Yeah. Yeah, mine has 3. They're all cellular.
And by the way, we are seeing, things like Starlink. I have a lot of Adobe friends that live out in the middle of nowhere, and that's what they're all running.
That's next for me.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I can tell you, it's been pretty cool to watch that kind of speed. Talk about remote editing. And they just announced that that's going mobile, so you can be in a camper going down the road, or maybe a Tesla. Who knows how they're going to connect all these dots going down the road and be able to have this connection. So it's exciting times, and I keep going back. Let's just say your homework's never done.
No.
There's no time. There's not enough time to listen to all the podcasts you have to listen to, much less make a podcast to keep up with the technology and reading the trade magazines or trade websites, right? I mean, and then you have to be able to parse that out. And that brings us back to this sort of Knights at the Round Table instead of Game of Thrones I was talking about, where we kind of have to count on each other to sort of weed through some of that and say, here's some of the tech that I think is really good, and we should consider, bringing this into the discussion. And we kind of count on each other to weed things out a little bit. I do that a lot. For Adobe, and always have, as I look at a lot of the technology before I bring it to the rest of the team. And I do get a lot of questions from Michael and other team members say, what do you think about this? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't think that was that great, and here's why. Sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I need to dig into it a bit deeper to really understand it. But Starlink's just going to be another one of those when you've got some sort of sports event that's traveling, and you guys got to say, well, you could actually use Starlink to do this, that, or the other thing to produce that remote edit, right?
Right.
For sure.
The Workflow Show is a production of Chesapeake Systems and More Banana Productions. Original music is created and produced by Ben Kilberg. Please subscribe to The Workflow Show